They're ready for you, David. Please begin.
Good morning. Wow. So there's, of course, we're going to jump back into the overhauling of Straight America because we are going to complete that as well. We are not going to be slacking on that. There's so many things I want to just bring to the table. But we're gonna start off with a little something from Mission America. Just give me 1 minute. So Mission America, we get this from Linda Harvey. So if you don't get their newsletter, I really highly suggest you go to missionamerica.com and you subscribe to their newsletter. A lot of really important information and articles given. So no parents allowed at school-sponsored sexual corruption. So are you comfortable with your child writing an English class paper about a transitioning male to female makeup artist? Or answering an essay question explaining why some people masturbate? Are you comfortable with your child being forced to act as a homosexual in a sex ed role play in front of the whole class? How comfortable are you with your child being taught that sexting is here to stay and the only issue is consent? If this bothers you, it's time to change schools or to get active. Me personally, I say homeschool. You got to homeschool, right? Dangerously irresponsible sex education has arrived in almost every town, yet most parents still don't think it's relevant to their children at their school. But LGBTQ lessons and comprehensive porn-based sex education are boldly advancing, and sexual anarchists are shoving parents aside as they insist on the right to corrupt your babies and your grandbabies. The only way parents can evict these sexual squatters from classrooms is to expose the filth and make lots of noise. But if you try, you'd better be prepared for their dirty tricks. So here are some recent examples of battles at the local level. Washington State families are facing a brick wall of progressive obstacles and underhanded tricks over plans to put health clinics on site in schools. And conservative outreach is building as parents discern what such clinics will surely do: refer for abortions, prescribe contraception, and even possibly screen for and administer opposite sex hormones and puberty blockers, if I might add, to gender confused children. Some of it will be covered by insurance. A recent education hearing chaired by a Democrat refused to allow witnesses to engage in a full discussion of the impact of such clinics. Parents in that state also have grave concerns about requirements to teach sex ed beginning in kindergarten. Yeah, you did hear that right. In kindergarten. This mandate passed the Senate and is now before the House. And in a typically manipulative move, the opponent public testimony time was drastically reduced in a packed House hearing after Democrats used up 75 minutes on the front end to present the bill and hear from working group members. Sometimes the truth does break through, however. The testimony of one young man exposed the reality that comprehensive sex ed can easily hook kids on porn. The curriculum used in Washington state contains numerous explicit sex definitions, and when kids enter those phrases into a search engine, up pops every XXX rated visual one can imagine. Apparently, the hearing room fell silent as the young man shared his legitimate concerns. The pressure for teens to initiate sexual activity is enormous. One portion of this proposed Washington curriculum, a radical kindergarten through 12th grade program for advocates for youth called 3 R's: rights, respect, and responsibility. Well, this youth group chastises any message of shame towards students who are having sex. In other words, this is normal, kids, go for it. It also tells students that sexting is here to stay, with the only thing to decide is consent. You see, y'all, when I was recruited into this darkness, right? When I was what we say molested, right? I was molested into this movement, into the LGBT movement. But now they don't have to physically molest your children. Why? Because the mental molestation, they're raping your babies, they're raping their minds. The mental molestation of impressionable children and adolescents is predictably underestimated by Democrats, Planned Parenthood, and LGBTQ activists. In fact, it is becoming increasingly evident that this is acceptable to these extremists. Illinois and New Jersey children will be forced to hear one-sided propaganda about homosexuals and gender benders under recent laws that, like the measure embraced in California several years ago, mandate pro-LGBTQ lessons. In New Jersey, the Family Policy Alliance is sponsoring a petition to allow parents to opt their children out of such classes not currently permitted under the new law. Parents are being blocked in many states from previews of the often XXX rated lessons. In Colorado, a bill requiring curricula to be available 90 days in advance to parents was killed in that state's Senate. How about in Fayette County, Georgia? Parents are incensed over plans to install a new sex ed program based on textbooks advocated by Planned Parenthood and Trojan condom manufacturers. High schoolers will be answering an essay on why people masturbate, and middle schoolers will hear advocacy of gender rebellion and the problem of homophobia. Some of those who train teachers are hardcore homosexual and trans activists, and the schools know it. Don't let a PhD behind any consultant's name prevent a closer look at the background. And down in Pinellas County, Florida, a drag performer, a stripper named Esme Rodriguez, also served until recently as the Safe and Healthy Schools Coordinator of Equality Florida, homosexual activist group, and was invited to make presentations at teacher training workshops at the county school district. Yeah. Did you get that? Not only is he a drag queen performer, but he's also a stripper. That means he strips. He takes his clothes off. For those of you that I know listen and are actually ignorant. A transplant from Minnesota, he, excuse me, his his preferred pronoun is the ludicrous they, but he's a he because he has a dink and he was born with a dink. And if you were born with a dink, you're a he, you're a male, you're a man, you're a boy. Hello. So he was the statewide school equity director for Outfront, Minnesota, and was well known to pro-family parents for LGBTQ advocacy in Minnesota schools. I'll have to send this over to Vicky Joy. She's up there in Minnesota. So given the questionable public school influences, is the solution to transfer your kids to a Christian school? Depends on the school. Shop carefully. Again, I have to say, homeschool. You know, the scriptures tell us to train up your child in the way, right? The way. Hello. It doesn't say send your child out to somebody else to be trained up, right? In one large Midwestern city several years ago, a school counselor in an all-girls Catholic school persuaded an emotionally searching 16-year-old that all her problems would be solved if she identified as a he. She met the counselor privately without her parents' knowledge. By the time she left for college, the teen, who had previously shown zero gender confusion, was taking testosterone, soon changed her name and entered into a quote-unquote marriage, a union of sorts with another woman. Her parents, who prefer to remain anonymous, are devastated. And I have not even addressed the growing threat posed by libraries with the explosion of propaganda and obscenity available to children in the libraries, books promoting drag queens to children, and young boys dressing as seductive adult women are the latest topics this spring for your preschool and elementary children. Are you sick yet? I think Trevor's probably sick. You're thinking, what can be done? Well, you could decide that your child's innocence is worth going to jail if necessary. This is the position of one man in the UK who has withdrawn his son from school rather than allow deceitful gender propaganda to transform his child's mind. Does it have to come to that? Not in America yet. Not if more parents and more people become aware and get involved. And when is the time to do it? The time to do it always is right now. Are you going to do it? Are you willing to stand up and speak out? Are you willing to go to the town hall meetings and the school board meetings and the library meetings? Are you willing to do all that? Are these little babies, the hope of their eternal salvation, worth it to you? You know, talked about this on our show last night on Take on the World TV. And yeah, I think maybe I should find it, open it up. and bring it up because it's important. See, there's actually, I don't have to pull that up. I can go right to the website. I did a blog about it actually. I have to say that the piece that I did in the blog yesterday that had all of the bearded men dressed as women with children sitting on their lap. I have to say there's actually people out there that call themselves Christians that defend these men and the parents of the children's right to bring their children anywhere they want. I just don't get it. Ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is bondage. Dictionary of love or lust for your sons and your grandsons. See this great, wonderful photo here of the Boy Scouts or the Scouts or the Cadets, whatever they're called. And oh, wait a minute. Wow. They're surrounded by rainbows. What a loving thought. See, those debating whether homosexuals should be scout leaders should take a look at the dictionary to help decide whether or not homosexuals have an inordinate interest in young boys. And the dictionary that I referred to is called the Queen's Vernacular, and also more recently known as Gay Talk. This is as real as it gets. And the following small sample, I'm going to say this, it's pretty disturbing. Okay? The following small sample is just a very small sample of the 254 gay words for boys described as chicken. Chicken is the primary term for boy in the LGBT community. It clearly implies that boys are for consumption, right? So chicken. Now remember, this is the Queen's Vernacular. That's what it was originally called. And then it was republished, but not changed, but just republished under the name Gay Talk. If you don't believe me, look it up, Google it, get you one. Find you a Queen's Vernacular or the book called Gay Talk, okay? Chicken. This is just a few of the definitions in the book, and I probably won't even read all of them because I tried to yesterday and I almost broke down in tears. Chicken, a young recruit, any boy under the age of consent, heterosexual, fair of face, and unfamiliar with homosexuality. Freshly killed or butchered. Butchered was a term that I not only heard, but I used often. And what it refers to is someone who is recently introduced to anal sex. And then the quote in the book says, "See how bow-legged that chicken walks? Looks like he was freshly killed in the hayloft." This is real stuff, yo. Pluck some feathers is another saying, or rip off a drumstick, or skin some chicken. I'm sure you know that if a chicken is a young recruit, any boy under the age of consent, a heterosexual boy, and unfamiliar with homosexuality, what skin some chicken means. Head and heels, describing physical allurement despite extreme youth, but too young or small to know what to do in bed. He must be helped by someone more experienced who will clasp the boy by his head and heels to lift him onto their jail tail. Pretty much it's self-explanatory. Any boy below the age of consent with whom sex merits a stretch in the pen. And I'm gonna tell you this. This is not also, but almost used as it's so lightly used, okay, I should say, that it's said often as, and even as in a laughing matter. Someone will say, "Oh, I don't care how old that boy is, that's jail tail." And that's telling you that it doesn't matter how young that boy is, but that that the person that just said, that called him jail tail, is so attracted to that boy that they would risk going to jail just to have sex with him. Egg, a male child too young to be sexually developed. Yeah, a male child too young to be sexually developed and therefore considered neuter. They call them pee-pee meat or yo-yos. Related terms, egg sucker is for an adult, a molester, a child molester, a pedophile, right? Cradle robber, man who likes very young boys, pee-pee lover. And then look at the quote that they put with that definition. Anything older than 10 is over the hill to a pee-pee lover, ready to crack open instead of a boy on the verge of puberty. This is Queen's vernacular. This is gay talk. This is the language that is part of this community for many, many, many years. Mind you, the Queen's vernacular was put out in the 70s or 80s, I believe. 70s, maybe. How about cupcake? How many of us see our young boys in society today effeminate, emasculated, soft, tender? Well, look at Cupcake. A young, girlish boy, though not necessarily gay. And then the quote that they have the nerve to put with it is, ask that kid with the rounders if he'd be interested in joining in an ancient Greek initiation rite. Lord have mercy. And on for over 100 more such terms. This lingo is absent from all normal national dictionaries for now. And no, folks, affectionate, non-sexual, or helpful words for boys does not exist in the Queen's vernacular or in the book Gay Talk. Why? Because it doesn't exist in their community. How do I know? I was a part of that community. And listen, I took advantage of boys. I used some of these words, a lot of these words. I truly saw things through that lens. And one thing I don't want us to lose sight of is that these men who are enveloped by this deception, by this perversion, they are not only forgivable, but in need of forgiveness. I know it detests a lot of us, but we see a thief. We're not as repulsed by a thief. We're not as repulsed as somebody who masturbates. We're not as repulsed as we're not even as repulsed from a murderer, from somebody who takes a life, as we are a pedophile. And I say that's something that we have to deal with and to get over, because James 2:10-11 says, if you're guilty of one transgression, you're guilty of all through the lens of Yahweh. Right? So we have to start seeing things through Yah's lens. And we have to make sure people understand that that these people aren't only forgivable, but they're in need of forgiveness. And that forgiveness comes through truth. And before I call myself or look like a liar, we're going to jump into the number 3 of the overhauling of straight America. So, we went through number 2 was to portray homosexuals as victims and not as the aggressive challengers that they are, right? So a media campaign that casts gays as society's victims and encourages straights to be their protectors must make it easier for those to respond, to assert and explain their new protectiveness. Few straight women and even fewer straight men will want to defend homosexuality boldly as such. Most would rather attach their awakened protective impulse to some principle of justice or law, to some general desire for consistent and fair treatment in society. Our campaign should not demand direct support for homosexual practices, but instead take anti-discrimination as its theme. How about that? It is especially important for the gay movement to hitch its cause to accepted standards of laws and justice, because its straight supporters must have at hand a cogent reply to the moral arguments of its enemies. The homophobes clothe their emotional revulsion in the daunting robes of religious dogma. So defenders of gay rights must be ready to counter dogma with principle. Make gays look good. In order to make a gay victim sympathetic to straights, you have to portray him as every man. But an additional theme of the campaign should be more aggressive and upbeat. To offset the increasingly bad press that these times have brought to homosexual men and women, the campaign should paint gays as superior pillars of society. Yes, we know. This trick is so old, it creaks. How's that for an admission of trickery? How's that for an admission of saying you've all been duped, you've all been fooled, you've all been tricked? See, you wouldn't know it was deception. It wouldn't even be called deception if you knew you were being deceived, right? And before I go into number 5, we may run a little over today, but we're going to go over here to a quick review of the last 15 years. And remember that this article right here that I'm referring to was written in 2004. A quick review of the last 15 years demonstrates the incredible effectiveness of this public relations advice. The agenda set out by Kirk and Madsen led to nothing less than social transformation. By portraying themselves as mainstream Americans seeking nothing but liberty and self-fulfillment, homosexuals redefined the moral equation. See, that's all they had to do, was redefine or reconfigure the moral equation. And now we're at a point where nobody has any morals. Issues of right and wrong were isolated as outdated, repressive, and culturally embarrassing. Instead, the assertion of rights became the hallmark of the public relations strategy. You see, beloved, other principles offered by the authors included making gays look good, right? We just read that, and identifying strategic historical figures as being hidden homosexuals, and on the other hand, making victimizers look bad in the public eye. Kirk and Madsen suggested isolating conservative Christians by presenting them as hysterical backwoods preachers drooling with hate to a degree that looks both comical and deranged. They offered a concrete example of how this strategy could be used on television and in print. Okay, they said, for example, for several seconds, an unctuous, beady-eyed Southern preacher is shown pounding the pulpit in rage against those perverted, abominable creatures. And while this tirade continues over the soundtrack, the picture switches to heart-rending photos of badly beaten persons or of gays who look decent, harmless, and likable. And then we cut back to the poisonous face of the preacher. The contrast speaks for itself. The effect is devastating. Beloved, I can't even watch the Humane Society commercial with that song that Sarah Laughlin, whatever her name is, song on it. Okay, I have to leave the room. I can't even listen to it or see it. And because I understand that so well, I can fully understand what the homosexual movement has done. For example, for several seconds, an unctuous, beady-eyed Southern preacher is shown pounding the pulpit in rage against those perverted, abominable creatures. While the tirade continues over the soundtrack, the picture switches to heart-rending photos of badly beaten persons or of homosexuals who look decent, harmless, and likable. And then we cut back to the poisonous face of that Southern preacher that's pounding the pulpit in rage against the perversion, the abomination, right? The contrast speaks for itself, and the effect is devastating. Public relations is now a major part of the American economy, with hundreds of millions of dollars poured into advertising strategies and image enhancement programs. Observers of the public relations world must look back with slack-jawed amazement at the phenomenal success of the approach undertaken by homosexuals over the last 2 decades. And so since this was written in 2004, let's say the approach undertaken by homosexuals in the last 4 decades. The advice offered by Marshall Kirk and Hunter Madsen is nothing less than a manifesto for moral revolution. A look back at this strategy indicates just how self-consciously the homosexual movement advanced its cause by following this plan. Those who oppose the normalization of homosexuality have indeed been presented as backwoods, antiquated, and dangerous, while those advancing the cause are presented as forces for light, progress, and acceptance. Love, love, love. Conservative Christians have indeed been presented as proponents of hatred rather than as individuals driven by biblical conviction, true love, right? Obedience. The unprecedented success of this public relations strategy helps to explain why America has accepted everything from homosexual characters and plot lines in primetime entertainment to the lack of outrage in response to same-sex marriage in Massachusetts, and now, since this was written in 2004, all over the nation. At least we know what we're up against, right? Biblical Christians had better talk about right and wrong, even when the larger world dismisses morality as an outdated concept. We must maintain marriage as a non-negotiable norm, a union of a man and a woman, even when the courts redefine marriage by, well, they already have, right? The courts have redefined marriage, but we don't see things through the court's lens. Well, we better not be seeing things through their lens. That's the world's lens. We had better start seeing things through Yahweh's lens. We had better start taking into account the transformation of the American mind that is now so devastatingly evident to all who have eyes to see. You see, the real tragedy of After the Ball, the book After the Ball, is that the great result of this is not a party, but the complete rejection of the very moral foundations which has made this society even possible. In order to address the most fundamental problems, we must understand the shape of the American mind. Looking back at After the Ball, after 15 years, well, and now it's been 40 years, right? It all comes into frightening focus. Wow. How about that? Lord have mercy. It's a whole lot of spirits, brother. Let's see. Trevor says it's a spirit. Yes, it sure is. It's a whole lot of them. One thing I can always say about homosexuality is that it does not come alone. It is a legion. And the person has to be delivered from each of those spirits. And then on top of that, it takes a long time for us as our human minds and our human nature, right, to break habits. There's a lot of men out there right now who have been set free from homosexuality, right? They've even been delivered from the effeminate spirit, but they remain effeminate. That's a habitual sin. They are habitually sinful. And the way our minds work, it could take 3 to 7 years to break those types of habitual habits. I'm just past being 10 years free. And there are still habits that I've yet to totally break because I don't focus on them to work on them enough, right? I've been blessed I've been blessed and highly favored, right? Blessed beyond measure that Yeshua, that Jesus the Christ himself showed me how to be a man, revealed to me what masculinity was, and delivered me and removed that effeminate spirit, right? And the habitual effeminization. But this is a process. Sanctification is a process from glory to glory to glory to glory. Hello. Point of all this, souls. I can't say it better. Listen. If you're willing to reach into the flames and try to yank somebody out, you better be willing to get burned, because it's going to happen. How you respond to that is even more important, right? Well, I'm going to try to sign off with some events coming up. February 17th, which I believe is Monday. Yes. I'll be in Presque Isle, Maine, and going up there to speak at a meeting or a gathering with several pastors and ministry leaders. And so this may open up some doors right here in Maine for this ministry and this witness. February 22nd in Gambier, Ohio at Kenyon College. Rescue the Children is the name of this mission. And I'd like to be there. It's not in my budget right now. That might be changing in the next day or two. If it does, I'm there. So join us as we witness to a very lost, broken, and dying world of youth that are being indoctrinated and targeted by another group of very broken, tormented souls that are being used and victimized by a very dark political mass. And let's bring them all one thing: hope. Let's represent hope by bringing them truth in love. Amen. So what is it? Rescue the children. Why? Because kindergarten through fourth grade children are going to be taught about transgenderism by the LGBTQ movement. A lot of lost college students also come down to the streets to dialogue with the groups whenever they are out there. Okay, so it's going to be Saturday, February 22nd, Kenyon College on Middle Path, 103 College Road in Gambier, Ohio, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Listen, beloved, if you're in Ohio, it sure would be nice to either, if I get to go, see you there, or if I don't get to go, know that you were there representing. Who? Christians who want to share the gospel and reach the lost. That should mean all of us. Speakers, those that are led by the Holy Spirits. The cost, being hated by the world. It'd be nice if you could RSVP or drop a line to Jeff Klein. His number's on the website to let him know that you're going to try to be there. March 3rd, I'll be speaking in a public high school to 4 senior classes back to back. And that's going to be a blessing. And then March 13th and 14th, lost my page here, going up to Marshfield, Wisconsin, the 2020 Vision Conference. It is the Wisconsin Christian News Ministry Expo and Conference, March 13th and 14th. So if you could get up there or you want to make a trip, there's a host of amazing speakers. Pastor Mike Spalding, Osama Dakdok, Lexi Hall, Curtis Bowers, Jake McCauley, Jamie Walden, Coach Dave Daubenmeyer, myself, Leighton Howerton, the Christian Celtic Band. So look, if you can get there, get there. If you can't, Amen. Yes. Actually, like I said, Trevor, that might change in the next day or two. And if it does, I'll be there. Um, Unfortunately, I'm not able to run down there because I'll be heading back down there, right, on the 28th. And so if I was to go down there for the 22nd, then yeah, I have to make sure it's in my budget. And right now, at this very moment, it's not in my budget. Um, However, you know, a sister has contacted me and said she's gonna try to make it happen. So let's pray that if Yah wants me there, that I'm gonna be there, right? Um, what's amazing is that at this event, they're going to be reading the book I Am Jazz, right? And so the book I Am Jazz is one of my favorite pieces to debate. Why? Because it's completely full of garbage. All right. It's completely full of nonsense. And so what I've done, and I guess I can share it. It's a 6-page info packet, of course, but it covers it's an endocrinologist evaluation of the book I Am Jazz. Why? Because the book I Am Jazz contains both false information and very troubling omissions. Children who are experiencing gender dysphoria will likely be harmed by this book, as will children who do not have the condition. So it works against educating children about gender dysphoria. So it would really be a blessing to be able to be there and to explain to the parents that are trying to take their little fourth graders and kindergartners into this place at this college campus to be indoctrinated and to be fed this nonsense. It would be a real pleasure to be able to stand there and explain to them how not only do I know from this medical doctor's perspective, but I know from my own life experience perspective that these hormones and puberty blockers and these procedures and this community and this death style, that it all leads to one place. To tragedy. That how do I know the suicide rate doesn't go down with acceptance? Because I know yeah, it would be nice to be able to share that with these parents, right? Oh, man. Thank you, guys. I know I went a little over, but it happens, right? Praise Yah for each of you. I love you, and I thank you for being here. That's supporting enough. But please remain in prayer for this event coming up on the 22nd at Kenyon College, as well as all of the events and all the little happenstance meetings in between, right? Because we know there's no such thing as a coincidence, that it's in His plan. You have a blessed day. Peace.